Hi, it's Eric Saturn again. Welcome to the part 11 of Brewing with the Baron. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to check on the status of the stuff that we created starting 2 to 3 weeks ago. Now, you're going to see some interesting changes. And one of the things is, right here is the wine that we did pretty much right at the very end. All we did with this was we just added granulated white sugar. And it's fermenting like crazy. Now, what you can do is take a flashlight. You probably can't see it too well, but if you shine a flashlight in, you can actually see the internal convection of all the gases from the bottom rising up. So you're going to get a nice little convection motion, which is nice. That's perfect. Now, here we have both the apple juice that we didn't put any sugar in and the pomegranate that we did on the second day. Both of these are still bubbling. Now for this one, last week, it pretty much stopped. That means that the fermentation of just the apple sweetness itself was fermented. So what I did was I added in a half a cup of regular granulated white sugar. I'm going to do that to the pomegranate. It's still fermenting pretty good, but I'm going to show you how you can do a second fermentation in the original bottle. All right. Now this one is done. This is one that I did approximately 4 to 5 weeks ago. It's another mellow mel. Pretty much what we did with the one that we did on the second week. But with that one, we used pretty much sugar and brown sugar. This one was used with honey. It took about a week for this one to start. Another one that I did actually took 2 weeks, so that one is still fermenting. So we're going to go and do a fermentation from this jar into a second jar. Now, you can see this. That's great. We have, this is the just straight mead, okay? This one also has an internal convection that is going great. So that worked out perfect. Now, after that, we did the 2 1 gallons of apple cider and brown sugar and apple cider and molasses. All right, this one is the brown sugar. It is fermenting, as you can probably see by the bubbles that are coming up. They're going to pretty much ferment at different rates. But because these are also compound sugars, they're not just compound, but they're much more dense sugars. So the brown sugar, which has sugar and molasses, took about 2 weeks for it to start. This is the molasses. This one just started 2 days ago to start to ferment. So almost 3 weeks, just over 2 weeks. This one was about a week and a half. These took about a week, mainly because not just the fact that they're small, but the fact that the apple itself had no other sugars. So it took a while to get to the natural sugars. And this one, like I said, started in between 5 and 7 days. And it's going like crazy. So that is the current update of what we have done. So if you guys have been doing this, you should be able to see, all right, what is the status of yours compared to what's the status of what we did. So it's a good comparison. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move some of these out of the way, and I'm going to show you another example of doing the second fermentation by taking from one bottle, putting it into another. First, what we're going to do is we're going to do an example of taking and using the same bottle for your second fermentation. So as I said, even though the pomegranate one is still going, we're going to add another half cup of sugar to it, so it'll allow for a second fermentation to start. So as we're seeing here, we're not actually transferring out, we're just adding to the original. cup. Just straight white granulated sugar. Keep that so it doesn't touch anything. Get my funnel. And as always, I have already pre-sanitized everything just for convenience. Put that one back on. And what you're going to know is you're going to see that there's going to be a light foaming occurring. That's essentially the sugars dissolving. But in a day or two, you're going to get that nice film or foam that starts to occur. That means that the second fermentation has started to really activate. All right. Bring this chair over here. We're going to use the same size bottle, just bring it a little bit lower to make sure gravity flows real well. As I said, I have already pre-sanitized everything ahead of time for speed. Now, remember the trick I taught you about how to do this by yourself? What you want to do is you want to make sure you have a roll of tape. Put it around the barrel or the neck. Put it in. Whoop. Definitely want to make sure that this hose does not come out. As you can see, I put it in just below the top part of the bell. Now from here, I'm going to take the old one out. This is still good, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I clean the stopper really well. So put that in there. Now again with the siphon, you want to make sure you don't go all the way to the bottom. You don't want to stir up the debris on the bottom. And you don't want to get anything on top that can clog it. So if you got a straight line, or as I have here, a siphon, put it in. Nice and gentle. Put it about halfway. And that's it. Now we're siphoning. Now remember, take your time with this. The more you move it, the more it's going to agitate, the more you're going to get debris, both on the bottom and top, that's going to start circulating. You want to make sure you get as clean of the fluid out as you can. And of course it's 5 gallons, so it's going to take a little bit. And I'll show you later. The trick is when it starts to get smaller, you start tilting the bottle so that you get more liquid in one area. And that's when you start focusing on the bottom of the siphon to make sure it stays in the clear area. Some people are going to go, well, you should siphon off as much as you can, and then you can filter it several times to get all the debris out. Some people are going to say you should keep at least 1 inch to 2 inches of all your first fermentation stuff still in, so you don't get any debris. Personal choice. You can go and filter this many times. Like I said before, another way to do it is to put some cheesecloth in to get some more of the smaller particles out. Personal choice. And also, if you got just 2 bottles, there's only so much you can do with 2 bottles. If you got 5 bottles, you can do a lot of siphoning. But every time you siphon, you should at least let it sit for at least 12 to 24 hours to let everything settle again, either the debris on the bottom or whatever is floating still on top. But remember, this is going to be a second fermentation, okay? So once we get everything in here, the goal is to activate it again, put more sugar in, more yeast, and start the fermentation process all over again. Since this one took about 4 weeks to fully ferment, it's probably going to take less on this one, mainly because we're just using straight sugar. So it's going to start to ferment faster, like I had stated earlier. The other thing is we're not really taking all of the citric acid for the sugars, because that's already done usually in the majority of the first fermentation. You're getting the remainder or the remnants during the second. Yes, it's taken a long time. Let's see. Can you hand me my flashlight real quick? I had some helpers today, so if you hear some strange noise and the floor moving and the camera shaking, yes, they can see you. Just your forehead and glasses. There you go. Thank you very much, Alex. That was quite enjoyable. If you have a hard time seeing where things are, like I showed you earlier, I use a flashlight. So you can go take the flashlight from behind, shine it, and you can see the bottom half, which is black. You can actually see that a little bit better. So as it gets thinner and thinner, sometimes you're going to be able to see it. It's going to be really hard to see when we siphon the molasses, because it's not going to lighten up that much. Honey, very light. I use the white grape juice, very, very light. It's going to be easy. Some of it's going to be a little bit harder. When you want to do that, what you can do is you can take out of the siphon, you got one tube and a smaller tube in the middle. You can actually take the smaller tube out of the middle, and you can actually lean that against the glass for better visibility. Since this is still taking some time, I'll start saying a few other things that's going to be noticed and will help later on. Right now, there's about 40 gallons of alcohol in here. 5 gallons of it's already done. The other 35 are still brewing. One thing you want to make sure is that you always have a room that's nicely temperature controlled. Anything you can get as close to 70 degrees is pretty much going to always ferment anything that you're trying to do. But what you do need to have is good circulation, okay? Right now, in this room, it's a normal, I say 10 by 12 room. If the door is closed and then 24 hours later you open it back up, you're going to get a very big odor. It's not going to be a horrible odor, but you know that there's a lot of fermentation going on in this room. So you always want to make sure that you don't get lightheaded, get silly or stupid. We do that on our own. We don't need this to additionally help the odor, not the alcohol. We're making alcohol. That's what we're trying to do. So you always want to make sure you have a good temperature controlled room and a good vented room. All right, we got about half of it drained so far. I'm going to try and speed it up by actually bringing it lower, which will actually increase the speed of the siphoning. Now, this is another trick I'm trying to explain to you. Sometimes when you're siphoning, especially if you got a 1 gallon container, the siphoning can go very quickly and you're like, oh man, I got some debris in there that I didn't want and all this other stuff. If you want to siphon slower, get a chair, put the bottle on the chair, the siphon will go slower and you have better control of what you're trying to do. Of course, also having the different size hose or siphon can also change. I get a bigger siphon because it's much easier for me to take this 5 gallon compared to a much smaller siphon, which takes even longer. But like I said before, I can also take out the center and put it in and continue to siphon. And at that point, I now have better control of what I'm siphoning. All right, now that we're getting a little bit lower, you can see right here, hopefully you can see the black part of the siphon a little easier. Okay, I want to slow it down, so I'm going to put it back. Let's get heavy. Onto the chair, and I'm going to slowly start tilting this bottle. Remember, you want to do as little movement as possible to ensure as little debris is agitated or shifted. Now you can also do a second, I'm not going to call it a second fermentation. We're doing this to do a second fermentation. Obviously fermented a second time in a different bottle. Trying to get it fermented again in a bottle this size, you're not going to get the type of product that you want. All you're going to do at this point is just cause more debris. So you siphon for the purpose of getting rid of the dead yeast, any particles. So you can go and siphon this, wait 24 hours, siphon it into another container, wait 24 hours, siphon it again. And every time you do that, it's going to become clearer and cleaner. And like I said before, another way of doing it is also putting some cheesecloth around the end to capture any of the big or larger pieces. Now, since I have orange slices in here, some of the bigger pieces could be the orange remnant particles. You know, when you have an orange and you get like some of those pieces in there, those are small enough that can still be siphoned. But if you get a couple layers of cheesecloth and wrap it around the edge or the end of the hose, those pieces will be caught in the cheesecloth and you won't have to worry about it. I'm not being that detailed for this first one because I'm trying to get all of the major particles to stay in the first bottle or this bottle. So I usually go till about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of liquid that's still in the bottle. The bigger pieces, like I said, is not really that big of a problem. I just don't want to get more of the dead yeast remnants to be in my second bottle. Yes, this is so exciting. Now, if you have the capability of fast forwarding through a lot of this boringness, I'm all for it. Because honestly, I just can't think of anything interesting right now to keep on talking. The one nice feature pertaining to this type of siphon that some people like and some people don't is the fact that you really can't push it down or whatever angle so that the bottom hits the glass. I find it that helps so that you don't have an accidental tendency of hitting it into the yeast debris remnants and everything, so it gives you a better siphon of clear liquid. Some people who like to get as much liquid out don't like that part, so that's why I said you can compensate by taking the inner tube out of the outer tube, and that will actually get it close to the glass. It's strange, it almost looks like, oh, there's not much left, it should go very quickly. Like I said, I have this up, so it's going to siphon slower, but you're going to realize that you actually have a lot more than you think, And some people will say it's less than what I was hoping. It just is what it is. This is almost as exciting as watching that fireplace channel during Christmas time. I like watching it for a little bit and then I get bored. Then sometimes I just wait an hour, check to see if it was a different log texture. Oh, you're using hardwood this time instead of cedar. Or, oh, you got maple going. I bet you that's going to make the house smell great. Yes, I'm trying to keep your guys' attention. It's almost there. What would be great is if you guys say, man, part 3 was so much more exciting than this one. I need to rewatch part 3. That's a great idea. Personally, I think you should redo number 9, which is cordials. Oh, just to let you know, I also did 2 additional cordials. One was blueberry and one was strawberry with whipped cream vodka. And I did another 1 gallon mead. Well, it wasn't mead, it was just straight sugar and lychee and some allspice. So once that thing gets going, oh, that's going to be marvelous. Like I said, the other nice thing about why this thing is designed the way it is, that it doesn't hit the bottom, is that pretty much when you get it at the right angle, the thing is off the ground just enough that it perfectly siphons every single time the amount that you want. The only time that it becomes different is when you say, for example, the wine, that one might have a lot less debris. All you have to do is just push the siphon in further and it'll get closer to the bottom. So if you have like this much debris, you can bring it right down to here. If you got this much debris, you might want to just bring it right here. So you just bring the siphon tube up to keep a higher distance off the wall of the bottle. All right, it has stopped. I'll keep that in there for right now. Now, as you can tell, that's pretty good siphon. Pretty much nothing on top, very little particles that pretty much settled on the bottom. But as you can tell, we have lost about that much. Now this is when I say to keep an extra gallon of the original stuff that you used so you can add it in at this time. Yes, I know I use water to rinse it out. Some people get mad saying you don't need to rinse. Like I said, to me, it's my personal preference. What I am going to do at this point is take about 1 cup Okay, I really don't need 1 cup. I'm going to be drinking all of it. Right now, see if the aroma is what I'm looking for. This is also another time when it's like, I wanted more cinnamon. Add cinnamon powder to the second fermentation. That is both strong and sweet still. Have you guys tried it? Get some side opinions.
That slight punchy after.
That's right. I said it's still strong and sweet. So right now, I'm going to do the second fermentation. Keep that for later. Look at that, almost perfectly a gallon. It's not like I've done this before. And just to make sure, I'm going to add about 4 to 5 cups of sugar. Now what's going to happen is it's going to ferment again because I'm going to add yeast again also to it, of course. But sometimes you're going to have some of the yeast remnants still come in from the first batch. That's fine. You're just going to get a faster activation. Nothing wrong with that. Now remember, it was still sweet from before. Now, the sweetness from before was actually from honey. I didn't put any sugar at all in it, just straight honey. So this sugar is mainly going to ferment very quickly into additional alcohol. The sweetness is still going to remain because I used honey in this batch. Just so you guys understand that. Now, as I said, it was actually pretty strong. I actually don't need to ferment it a second time, but I always like to ferment almost all my stuff through 2 fermentations. Number one, I believe it gets a nice, better balance between stuff, so you're not getting a great sweetness or a horrible dryness or anything. I like something that's in the middle and balanced. The other thing that can occur, like I said before, if you want to add some more additional spices, then this is a perfect opportunity to do that. Now, let's say after this second fermentation that we do, it is very strong, lots of alcohol in it. And you think to yourself, man, I really don't want it this strong. I want something that tastes good, but it's something that I can't eat at a meal because I'm going to get hammered too quickly or whatever. What you do is you take, and you can up to half of it, put it into a bottle, fill it up to half, and then add the rest with just straight apple cider. Or if you like it, and you want it still stay a little strong, just fill it up so you have a quarter left, and you put a quarter's worth of apple cider in. Therefore, you can get the balance to the taste that you want, to the level that you're wanting to desire. Remember, you can always add cider later. It's hard to add alcohol later that's not fermented. Oh, I'll just add a rum. Well, now you're making a mead and a rum combination. I'm not a fan. You could be, that's fine. About half in there. Now, at this point, I want to add, do you think it needs a little bit more cinnamon or cloves? I'm thinking cinnamon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So take some ground cinnamon. I had an open one already. And from here, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Normally I would go 2.5 for every 5 gallons. But I know there's already cinnamon to it. I actually use cinnamon sticks. I tried something different. And that's why there was a hint of cinnamon, but not a huge flavor of cinnamon. So instead of doing 2.5, I'm just using 2, because there's still a little bit of cinnamon left in there. And also I put another gallon of apple cider back in there. So from there, I put in some more of my yeast nutrient. Normally I would use 5 teaspoons. Unfortunately, I got about only 2.5 left in here. Hopefully some of the yeast and stuff from the first batch is still in there to activate it. And I will put in, again, 10 grams of my yeast. Now from there, usually I just use the exact same stopper from one to the other. I mean, it's the same stuff. So I'm using the same airlock, but I did clean the stopper off just to be on the safe side. From there, stick it back on, and then we let it ferment until it stops. A good way to check to see, well, has it finished fermenting is if there's bubble, when it was fully fermenting, it was bubbling less than 3 seconds. It was just going like crazy. But if you take a stopwatch or you look at your phone or whatever you do, and you say, okay, bubble, and then you start counting. If it takes more than 3 minutes for another bubble to create, the majority of the fermentation is done, okay? Put it into a second fermentation. If you're only going to do a single fermentation, once it gets to that level, let it sit for 5 to 7 days. And at which point, when you're going to get to about a bubble once every 5 minutes, then it's done. Okay, for the amount of fermentation to alcohol transition is not worth it. All right, now from here, we'll let this sit. Now here is going to be where we have to clean. All right, I'm not going to go into the incredible detail because that's just boring. What you can do is pretty much, if you have a cheesecloth, like I said again, put a cheesecloth over here, turn it upside down, shake it, get all the debris that you can, correction, not debris, all the liquid that you can, and you put it over a pan. You go like this, and all the water will go through. You're going to get the rest of this still pretty good mead remnants, and you're going to have it in a pan. There's going to be some debris in it, of course, but at which point the rest of it, unless it all comes out, the best thing to do, since it's such a small opening here, is take it outside, clean out the bottle as much as you can, and then let it sit and dry. When it dries, it shrinks down to a much smaller size, and it's much easier to just get out at that point. So it's going to take a few days. All right, that's pretty much it for today. I want to thank you very much for showing up again for part 11. Hopefully this was the next stage of interesting and not this was incredibly long and boring. All right, this is Eric Saturn. Thank you very much. Oh, and show up tomorrow, starting tomorrow at 5:30. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm going to be teaching classes on SCA heavy fighting. So it's all going to be classroom at this point. We're going to do some type of what's known as shadow movements, i.e. going like this with your hands, striking essentially like with a knife hand to make sure you're understanding movement techniques, stuff like that. So it's not going to be big, it's not going to be exciting, it's going to be classroom, but it is important. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.